right? One, two, explain the process. Like, don't assume that these people understand what the process is. I don't care how many times they've gone through the system. Don't assume that they understand what the process is. So explain it. Explain the thought process behind why you're making the decisions that you're making. You know, it's not necessarily that you have to take people to law school, but explain the decisions behind why you're making the decisions that you're making. Let them know if they have unreasonable expectations. Set the guidelines and the parameters, right? So all that is necessary. It's necessary that, you know, attorneys look at common sense answers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the issue for child custody is, you know, what's the schedule going to be? And your client is like, nah, I just don't want, you know, her to have the kids at all. I don't want him to have the kids at all. You know that's not realistic. So don't encourage that. The common sense answer is, how can we make it to where you may not like it, right, but you can live with it in the best way possible, right?
Yeah, that's what's
Those are common sense answers. But I am going to stand by it, because I think, as an attorney, I've been on the other end where people just automatically have these assumptions. And so it is hard, as especially a newer attorney, you know, when I was a newer attorney, it is hard to try to commit to being all those things to people. And now I've got to fight against my clients for their best interest.
Okay. I can dig it. I've heard, you know, that some people, because my wife, she loves to watch, like, before we got married, more so than now. She don't really do it as much now. But before we got married, she used to watch these YouTube videos, and these people having these big, elaborate fucking weddings. And I would always be like, how can they afford these weddings? And then talking to you, you was like, a lot of people take out loans. Can you explain to me these people who taking out these $50,000, $100,000 loans, and then from what you're told me, like, when it comes to the divorce, part of that is in their decree.
Absolutely. And that's a heavy burden right there. So in the state of Florida, right, and understand this is not me giving your participants, your listeners, any legal advice, right? It just is what it is. They can look at the statute, right? Florida Statute 61. You'll see that in the state of Florida, there's what's called equitable distribution of marital assets, marital liabilities, right? Marital assets are anything that you get during the marriage. Marital liabilities, anything that you owe, or any debt you created during the marriage, right? And when I say equitable, that means what's fair, not necessarily equal, right? But there's a rebuttable presumption. You can change the court's mind, but the court is normally going to presume that everything's going to be down the middle equal, right? Okay. So when people are doing a lot of debt for their wedding, right? Putting it on credit cards and so forth. Oftentimes when they get divorced, if that balance is still, you know, whether they took out credit card debt or whether they did loans, which I have a lot of people who do loans, right? If they still owe that loan, guess what? That is divided. You know, unless there's some reason why it should be, right? Unless it's like one person is working, the other person has never had a job the entire day of their marriage, whatever. You know, it's something along those lines. But for the most part, that's divided. And now you're paying that debt after you've gotten a divorce. That's hurtful. Here's what's even more hurtful. I don't know if we've ever talked about this part. Here's what's even more hurtful. A lot of times things are required to be paid for before the wedding, right? Okay. So maybe it's put on one person's credit card or the other person's credit card, right? Here's what's funny. When we count for equitable distribution and whether something is marital or not, it's whatever debt has been incurred or gained from the date of marriage until the date of filing. So you're laughing because you already know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, we've had these conversations.
Okay, so oftentimes, depending on how, you know, we got married, we had this big blowout wedding, and, you know, 8 months later we're filing for divorce. Somebody's going to be hurt because if they put that thing on their credit card before they got married, technically that's not marital, that's all you, baby. Now, arguments can be made, and thank God arguments can be made, and that's why we have lawyers. Mm-hmm. But realistically, just unless there's some kind of bang up, wonderful argument being made, just looking at it, thank you. You know what I mean? Appreciate it.
Have you ever had to represent someone you didn't like?
Yes, absolutely. Indubitably, yes. I don't even know how else to answer that. And they didn't like me.
What do you personally find that most people get wrong about lawyers?
What do most people get wrong about lawyers? Okay. Couple of things. One, they just assume that
y'all balling.
That we're rich.
Yeah.
They automatically assume that we're rich. Like, that's always the thing. It's like, I know you've got plenty of houses. I'm waiting. I have many mansions in my father's house in heaven. They assume that we're rich, one. Two, they automatically assume, and I've had this happen more than people realize, and this is, I think, something unique. I've had people tell me, black families tell me, hey, you seem really nice, you seem really smart, but I feel like this judge ain't gonna listen to you because you're black. I need a white attorney. I need a Jewish attorney.
Wow.
Right.
Our community needs to do better.
Yeah, and so and that sort of goes along to when I was answering the previous question about what can we do for the community, because I remember distinctly one case where the family said that, and I was like, I went in and I got them exactly what they wanted. I got them everything that they wanted, right? And so I give them the bill, and this is a lesson to me. I always get paid up front, right? I give them the bill, and they were like, we don't want to pay this bill because, you did good, but we just feel like then the judge is going to give that to us anyways. We could have got that ourselves.
Wow.
And the thought was, and it was so funny. It was like, I thought that I had changed their opinion because they had told me, hey, Lisa, this judge is not going to listen to a young black woman, because at that time I didn't have, gray in my hair. So this judge is not going to listen to a young black woman. Not that gray would make a difference. I'm still black and a woman.
Yeah.
And so I thought I changed their mind when we walked out. And I told them, don't ever let me hear you say that, Yeah. They were like, okay, we could have got that same thing that you got, because that judge was just going to give it to us, because once again, these judges don't listen to black folk unless they want to.
Did you end up having to take them to court?
No, I didn't. Sometimes
it's best to just let it go.
Sometimes you just have to let it go, and that's the other thing that people get wrong about attorneys, at least the attorneys that I know and interact with on a regular basis. Most of my colleagues, really committed to doing a damn good job with each of their clients. Like, really committed to it. It's not just give me your money and I don't care what happens. Like, no, they want to do a really good job. So there is an emotional toil that's taken onto attorneys, which is why I think the suicide rate is so high. And the mental health rate is like needing of mental health. Is so high because we're literally, as attorneys, regardless of whatever attorney it is, right? Like family law, civil law, whatever, right? We are literally saying, hey, give us whatever it is that's keeping you up at night, that's making you cry with anxiety, when nobody's looking. Give that to us, right? Let us worry about it. Let us have the added worry of all your anxiety, because your anxiety doesn't go away because you gave it to us, right?
Yeah.
So let us have the worry of all your anxiety when you and your family is calling us back to back to back because you all want an answer, and let us fix it as best as possible. And that's one of the hardest lessons that it's taken me. I think I finally learned it, but we all have to remind each other sometimes we can't fix our clients' lives and our clients' decisions that they've made.
You know what? That is way more of a better answer than when I was asking you, how can attorneys have a better, image or persona of themselves to the public than the one you gave me? Like, that was part of why I wanted to have this conversation with you. I want people to see lawyers, not as lawyers, but as people.
Oh, okay. Well,
and
I didn't have no coffee before. I just took my last sip now.
Okay.
So I'm ready.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. But, that made y'all look more human as opposed to just people who are doing a job. I really do appreciate that answer.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And if the first answer was not coming across right, know my heart and go ahead and hit delete.
Okay, every now and again we'll hear stories about parents, be it male or female, who's trying to get custody of their children, right? And the court will deny them the custody. And then unfortunately we'll hear about a child who the parent who they were with ended that child's life. How important really is a child's well-being when it comes to the system? Because we keep hearing, it's about, who the child is best being with. But then situations like that happen. Like, is the child's well-being really that important, or is it more important to find out who's going to be paying child support?
Okay, so that's a really interesting question. So let me be honest with you, okay. and I'm going to be very blunt.
Okay.
The best interest of the child is literally the capstone.
Okay.
So even when we're studying for the bar, people who have no intention on practicing family law, sometimes they jump into family law cases because we're always taught that regardless of what, if there's a child involved, go with the best interest of the child argument. Mm-hmm. Because it's just that much of a cornerstone, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of people have to understand. What people have to understand is that everybody comes into court and argues that it's best for the child to be with them. No, it's best for the child to be with me. No, it's best for the child to be with me. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so these judges and attorneys, because sometimes we do agreements, can only deal with what we're communicated with. Mm-hmm. Right? We can only deal with what we're communicated with, and we can only deal with what is fact. So, for instance, cases where, there's been domestic violence maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. There's, hey, dad hit mom 5 years ago. Yeah, mom forgave him, let him back in, so forth and so on. They've been together this time. Now they're getting a divorce. Mom is using that domestic violence to show the court, hey, it's in the best interest for mom to keep the child and for dad not to see the child. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't add up because, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because, yes, it's horrible that child or that parent hit the other parent or whatever.
But I don't like you. I don't dislike my child.
Right. But not only that, but that was 5 years ago. Yeah. And you all got back together, right? Yeah. And I'm not using anybody's specific case. So, don't go Googling and seeing if I'm talking about something I'm not. Yeah. But, so then the court has to look at that, right? Yeah. And then the court has to look at, well, what has been going on? And so remember at the beginning, I was telling you that one of the things that is interesting to me is that people never recognize their role that they play. They don't recognize the part that they play, right? Yeah. So they make this story out that this person is so horrible. Well, guess what? The person that's quote unquote so horrible also has a story about why the other person is so horrible. Yeah. And a judge has to figure that out, or an attorney or so forth has to try and figure that out and find weave things. So oftentimes when it's a matter of, and knowing that parenting is a constitutional right, you can't just say, nah, I got my gut tells me you're sketchy. I don't want you with your own child. Mm-hmm. You can't make that decision, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's so important for parents to be able to parent their children. So you just have to go with what's communicated. So sometimes it happens and it gets it wrong. Now that's completely different than when, the state has removed a child and, I know we've heard stories of where caseworkers are not going to visit the child and one of the parents is saying, hey, the child isn't safe and there's something happens with the child. Mm-hmm. That's completely different. But when we're talking about, time sharing, we don't really say custody now. Okay. But when we're talking about time, you wouldn't have known that. No. But when we're talking about time sharing, who has the child for overnights and so forth, and parental rights and responsibilities, we're looking at that, and there has to be a doggone good reason why a parent can't have a child. And oftentimes you'll be surprised at how many people also manipulate the system. I
really wouldn't. I'm black. I know how many of us manipulate the system.
Right. Well, so people manipulate the system. It's, I'm going to call the police. You're going to get arrested for this. You're going to get arrested for that. So then that way I can show this, this is why. And so judges have to weigh that too.